Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to day number 5 of Enterprise Blockchain Week. Today, we're going to talk about Hyperledger. Enterprise Blockchain Week, okay, is brought to you by 5 different partners. Today, we're on the 5th day. We're going to talk about Hyperledger. We've covered, 7 days, 7 technologies. We have covered 4 so far. We've covered Quorum, Chain, Alibaba Cloud on as a blockchain as a service, and also hashtags. Yesterday, we took a real turn, talking about capital markets. CJ did a fantastic job. It's something worth actually rewatching. Today, we are going to cover a new technology called Hyperledger. I'm really excited to show you, but first, do stay to the end, for instructions. After every single session, you get to claim a very special, unique proof of attendance token. What is this token? For those who are joining us on the 5th day itself and you do not know what this is different than a traditional certificate of attendance, which you can easily lose, or you don't store it properly. So this is better. This is an Ethereum-based ERC 7221 non-fungible token, where it can be deposited in your cryptocurrency wallet of choice, and then is recorded on the blockchain. What this token does, it certifies that you have attended this session today, the introduction to Hyperledger, and you can show to your friends, your colleagues, at some point in the future, to say that I have cryptographic proof that I have attended this education session, and I have covered this, and this. So this is something really, really special that we put together. We hope you really like it. It can be a collectible item. Who knows? Don't think that it has any secondary value, but we do not know. If, let's say, for example, one day in the future, Chain should become this really, really huge thing, they might actually who knows, there's only like a limited quantity of these that are being printed. Memorabilia, really, really cool thing to go and actually take home with you. So this one is special for today. Stay to the end for instruction on how to receive it. If you have not received the one yesterday, hashtags, there is still time. The cutoff period is 6 p.m. today. So in order to be eligible to claim this token, you please go into this QR code, scan this QR code, or go into this link, bit.ly/tax_04May, and give us feedback. Fill up the form, give us feedback, let us know what you think about yesterday, what you liked, where can we improve, and then we would send you the link, after the cutoff point of 6 p.m. today. The Enterprise Blockchain Week, is a series that is brought to you by 5 different partners. Blocklime is the first one. In fact, they are the main organizer, I would say, for this, and the reason why we have this Enterprise Blockchain Week. Blocklime is a blockchain development and training company. Over the last 3 years, they have developed 1,000 blockchain developers, and they are my personal go-to group of people, to all things related to blockchain, because they can give very, very good technology agnostic and unbiased advice. Another partner of ours is Technology for Penang. This is a community up in the north for our friends, led by Kariku, and what they do is that they organize a lot of support initiatives to help entrepreneurs in the technology space. Third partner that we have with us is iTrain. iTrain provides a plethora of training programs ranging from hard skills, soft skills, and also in the technology space. We're also supported by Access Blockchain Association of Malaysia. They are the reason why our country has an emerging and growing blockchain industry. And last but not least, you have yours truly. My name is Jason. I'm from Bitcoin Malaysia, and I'll be your host and moderator for the entire 7 days of this Enterprise Blockchain Week. Combined together, our mission is to help 50,000 more Malaysians to enter the blockchain industry by providing a safe, neutral, and an easy environment to learn what this very difficult to understand technology actually is about. And also to help people to differentiate what is real and what is fake, so that you can pay your attention on what are the real opportunities that are available in this space and capture them. Part of our mission is also to help you to find more remote work and alternative income in this industry, because especially during this time, when a very unique period where a lot of people are looking for alternative sources of generating income. The blockchain space actually has a lot of opportunity, and it's not uncommon to have a remote working team. Last but not least, by giving you the kind of education that you need, and creating a supply of educated, well matured people in our country who understands about what blockchain is, what blockchain isn't. Thus, we are able to attract blockchain projects from all over the world to come to Malaysia and hire us to find local users, adopters, fans, and champions. Over these 7 days, why we do what we do is because we hope that you will gain these 5 things. We hope that you will gain strong blockchain fundamentals. Again, we emphasize this a lot, and if this is starting to sound like a repeat to you, that's a really, really good thing, which means that the messages are coming, are being driven home, and when to use blockchain, when not to use blockchain, what is a blockchain, and when is it not appropriate to use a blockchain. If by now you understand what this is, then kudos to you, because this is exactly why we do what we do. It also is a sign of maturity in the space. And why is this important to know is so that you don't find yourself in a situation where you're using blockchain just because it is a hype word, but you're actually solving real problems, and you're actually delivering value, and you're actually generating income for yourself. We hope that during this Enterprise Blockchain Week, that you will understand the differences, and of what is the difference between, say, Ethereum, which is a public permissionless blockchain, and what is the difference with a private permission blockchain, like what you have learned. Example Quorum, example Anchain, AliCloud BAS, Stacks, Hashstacks, and today you're going to learn Hyperledger. Tomorrow you're going to learn Archicorda, and the last day you're going to learn Hedera Hashgraph. And you're going to take away like lots of use cases. Last week we talked about use cases from medical. We talked about use cases in supply chain, product verification, and there was one use case about introducing supply chain verification using as a form of mining. These are among like some very broad use cases. We want to basically give you as many use cases so that it will inspire you to what is possible, so that you can also apply it in your own industry and innovate, iterate. This is what this entire week is all about, so that you are able to start your own experiment, propose up to your company, to your management, or just where do you begin? How do you get started for your own enterprise? So today we're going to talk about Hyperledger Fabric. These are some of the recent news. That if you just Google Hyperledger, some of the exciting things that are happening. There has been a lot more enterprise adoption, and it looks like Hyperledger is gaining. It's like one of the largest that has gained a lot of traction. It's like the go-to platform for actually building on top of. This is an example in the aerospace industry where the supply chain of spare parts. There's this platform called Go Direct Trade. It's like an Amazon-like marketplace. Every year it's like roughly about a $4 billion industry. So how does blockchain come to place? It replaces, it basically introduces a new element of trust, a trust layer in this marketplace, where it replaces word of mouth, a trust that's built through word of mouth, instead through documents that are secured by a blockchain. And one of the key takeaways from this article is that why this is turning heads is because right now we are seeing billion-dollar industries actually using blockchain to bring trust to traditionally non-transparent markets. Another one in the news also is this one is from Forbes. How Tesla and BMW are currently using Hyperledger Fabric to introduce more efficiencies in their processes. Tesla Inc. Recently launched a pilot project providing improved C-way bill information across the shipping consortia. We also have BMW launching their own project called Blockchain that utilizes blockchain technology for their logistic operations. And the takeaway being is that it looks like Hyperledger is establishing itself as the dominant protocol for supply applications. Now, Hyperledger is really, really huge. Okay, there's actually this huge suite of tools, huge suite of distributed ledgers, libraries. I'm really, really excited. Okay, for our speaker today to actually give us the full picture. Okay, because actually Hyperledger looks much bigger than this. So imagine Hyperledger as a house. Under the house, there are distributed ledgers, there are libraries, there are tools. Okay, it's really, really huge. There's like so much that you can do with Hyperledger. And here's a key word. All of the above are open source. So I think in the few couple of days ago, during the sessions, some of you actually asked across to the speakers, is your blockchain protocol, is your platform, are your tools, are they open source? And some of the answers were no. Whereas for Hyperledger is yes. So what is open source? Okay, I'm going to leave it to the speaker to share with us. What is open source? Okay, why is it important? Okay, to know about open source and what are the benefits? Okay, of open source. Because I think that this has so far has been absent. Okay, in the last in the last 4 days. So it's going to be really, really exciting. I can't wait, okay, for the speaker to share with us what he has prepared today. And this speaker who's going to be presenting today is someone who's very new. Okay, we have not heard from him for a long time. His name is Harpreet Singh. He's from Blocklime. Okay, he's our friend. Hi, Harpreet. How are you today?
Hi, you can hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Hi, hello everybody. Yeah, I'm ready.
So I think we don't need any more introduction, okay? But if you like, okay, maybe you can give a short intro, okay, of like how did you come to become, say, the ambassador of Hyperledger before you begin?
Actually, it's a very interesting story. So I keep seeing my face appearing everywhere, so I wanted to get somebody else to speak for Hyperledger today, but sadly he couldn't make it. So that's why you can see me repeating for Quorum and Hyperledger. But coming back to your question, Hyperledger, I was actually quite involved with Linux Foundation open source programs. So I was used to, I used to go and explore, learn, participate in their events, and also write some codes. So some of the Linux community members actually knew me. And when I was one of the early people to also explore towards what is Hyperledger, Fabric, and I was actually asking them a lot of questions and bugging their life. And I was one of the few people from ASEAN doing it. So when they look into ASEAN, who we know from there, it's like, hey, we know Harpreet. And by the time I started running Blocklime, I got one of my old friends from Linux Foundation who joined Hyperledger contacted me. He connected me with the community at Hyperledger, and he said, like, Harpreet, can you help us to actually spread more awareness about this? A lot of people are misunderstanding about what we are, and people don't really know about the Hyperledger protocol and the initiatives that Linux Foundation is taking. Would you like to kind of just spread the word for us? And then they kind of asked me if you can also be an ambassador. So I actually didn't went through. There's actually a process to go through, be elected as a technical ambassador. So I didn't go through the process of applying to be a technical ambassador and went through. I was actually elected in because they knew me. I had a reputation. And been in the community for some time. And they said, can you actually, and they knew I can deliver and I understand the Hyperledger protocol. So they just said, okay, would you like to take the role and just spread the word? So that's how I got involved in the Hyperledger program. And we actually were also, was a developer previously, and I built a few applications on Hyperledger Fabric. And even right now with Blocklime, we actually did a few development projects with Hyperledger Fabric. We do some consultation programs with Hyperledger Fabric. So we're quite involved, not only in Fabric anymore. We actually started to look into Burrow as well. We have some inquiries towards that direction as well. So maybe we are also exploring other projects from Hyperledger as well. So that's how I slowly got involved into this whole community, this whole ecosystem. And I thought that maybe it's nice to go out and share about them, because everybody else were focusing on the crypto community. Because if you look into the crypto community discussion, there's a lot of incentive to take the discussion, because there's rewards, there's airdrops, there's incentive, there's monetary incentives around it. And that's also fun, rebellious. So a lot of people get very excited about that kind of concepts. But enterprise blockchain and Hyperledger being an open source initiative, it's quite boring. It's very technical. So a lot of people don't want to go up and pick up such initiatives, because a lot of people think that there's no incentive for us, there's no crypto rewards or things like that we're going to be there. So they tend not to run communities like this. So but I saw it as a challenge. I saw that okay, maybe we can pick this up. It's an interesting topic. They're trying to solve a problem with a totally different approach, and it's open source. And I said maybe it kind of like checks in all my consciousness and the things that I believe in. I decided to support Hyperledger's community and basically also help them to share their word about what they are. So I think generally that's how I got involved in this whole Hyperledger discussion.
Cool. So are we ready to share with us about Hyperledger for beginners, bro?
Sure. Yeah, let me share my presentation. Okay, I'm going to be going on board. Can you see my screen?
Wait a minute. I'll need to add it into the stream.
Okay. You see my slide, right? Okay.
There we go. Yeah, you can.
Okay, 1 second. Let me
very cool slides.
Let me get this out of the way. Yep, now it'll be better. Okay. Okay, awesome. So let's get started. So I think for those who don't know me yet, or you haven't seen me speaking, so I think I need to do a bit of introduction about myself. So I'm the CEO and co-founder of Blocklime, and I'm also the CTO of Verifizer. We are building a product for supply chain traceability, and mostly to simplify what is Verifizer is a supply chain as a service. And I'm also a blockchain educator. So basically I do a lot of trainings and I develop a lot of content. And I used to be basically a blockchain developer previously. And these days I do more education and consultation. But I also do things that I do mainly for passion. And you can see my passion work is more than things that I do for earning. So I think I need to focus more on earning in future. But in this, all the work that I do, basically for my passion, actually gave me a lot of exposure, a lot of things that I get to learn from this. So that's the reason I decided, because I already had all the connections and contacts in place, I decided to put in place this Enterprise Blockchain Week quite quickly and say, like, well, can we discuss each of this topic in 7 days? So I won't go much in detail. You can actually scan the code over there and add me on LinkedIn. And I think let's move on to the topic today. So, and yeah, one more thing before that, need to do a bit of selling. So Blocklime is a development company. We basically do a lot of development support for people who needs to build blockchain applications, especially towards enterprise blockchain development, custom blockchain development, wallets, exchanges. So we kind of serve on all the layers, everywhere from protocol to supporting people from even maintaining their blockchains and even consulting them. Let's say we mostly get only involved in technical consulting. We have partners who do all the legality and business models and PR and all the other sort of consulting. We focus mostly on technical consulting. And then we noticed there was a huge gap not only in the Malaysian ecosystem, but the whole of ASEAN ecosystem, to be honest. We started to notice that there was not enough developers who understand what we are really dealing with. So whenever we want to hire, we could not find people. And whenever we have sessions like this, a lot of the technical discussion actually we can't have. We basically don't have the gang that we can sit down and talk about like blockchain stuff. I find that very lonely place to be in the beginning, where you knew a lot of technical stuff, you want to discuss it with somebody, and you couldn't actually do that because there was nobody else who understood what you're trying to talk about. So when I saw that, I said maybe we need to do more trainings, more development. We need to kind of push out more community outreach about the technology, so there can be more developers who get on board. There can be more people who can choose blockchain as a career option, and more people will be in the community, and more technical people will be there. More innovations will happen. It kind of move on down the cycle. It kind of implements complements everything in the cycle. So we said, okay, training is something that we would want to focus on as well. So we moved on from just being a bunch of nerd developers providing development consultancy support to also trainers and also community players as well. So moving quickly to what we're going to talk about today. Basically, we want to discuss a few questions. First of all, what is Hyperledger? There's a lot of confusion about Hyperledger. So a lot of people think that Hyperledger is a company, or Hyperledger is one product, and a lot of people think that it's owned by IBM, and there's a lot of misconception about it. So we'll talk about what exactly is Hyperledger, who's running it, then also what are the projects that are being built under Hyperledger, and who is it being built for, and who are using those projects. So I think these are like some of the questions that a lot of people have on their mind, and there's a lot of myths around it. So I just would want to cover some of these questions. Moving next, I think let's get let's address the elephant in the room. A lot of people have this misconception that Hyperledger is a product by IBM, or Hyperledger, it's one project. But if you really look into the definition that has been provided by Linux Foundation, Hyperledger is an umbrella project of open source blockchain and related tools started in December 2015 by Linux Foundation. So what that sentence gives you, it's an umbrella project, so it has multiple sub-projects, and their focus is on open source blockchain and related tools. So they also build tools, they build blockchain protocols. They've been, and the next sentence you can say talk about, they've been there since December 2015, so they have been here for some time already, around 5 years, and it's been initiated by Linux Foundation. So even Linux Foundation don't really own it. It's an open source initiative. So what they did is Linux Foundation came up, they said, this is the idea. We're going to build up Hyperledger as our umbrella project, and then we're going to let community and people to come in and suggest what are the sub-projects they want to build, and what are the innovations they want to do. We would want to be the people who kind of supports the conversation and supports the the kind of like a community player of open source players, and support the hosting of this discussion and this development. And a lot of big players noticed early on the potential of blockchain, and they were looking into how can they get involved. So IBM, Intel, SAP Ariba decided to join in and kind of collaborate in the development of some of these blockchain ledgers. So IBM, Intel, and SAP, they do not own Hyperledger. They give donations or they give contribution towards development of certain of their products. Okay, so in this case, Hyperledger, it's a project initiated, open source project initiated by Linux Foundation. It's run by them, but all the protocols and sub-projects under them also is not like 100% theirs. It's all open source. And all the coding are basically done, contributed by companies, by individual developers, and there's a lot. Even let's say if there's any developers out there that would like to see how can they contribute into some of these projects, they can go onto the Hyperledger's website and go under the section that I would want to contribute as a developer, and you can see what are the projects and what are the problems that are currently they're facing. What are the open threads out there. You can just join in and try to write codes for that particular section. So I think this is like something that we have to clarify in the beginning itself, that Hyperledger is an umbrella project under Linux Foundation, not owned by any of the other MNCs out there, and it has multiple sub-projects under it. Moving next, going into a bit more detail, just to clarify again, hosted by Linux Foundation, fast-growing LF history, and they have global collaboration spanning finance, banking, IoT, supply chain, manufacturing, and technology. They are not only focused on one part. Or like usually we have like certain technologies that we have discussed in this enterprise solution. Some are only focusing on capital market. Some are only focusing towards like financial technologies and consortiums. Some are only focusing towards let's say database management. In this case, Hyperledger doesn't have that focus. It leaves that discussion towards its industry partners and members who are bringing in like the projects to them, and they want to initiate the projects with them and make it an open source initiative. But they already have more than 250 members who already joined them, and all of them come in from different sort of technology background and like industry background, and there are multiple sort of projects that have been initiated on Hyperledger at the moment. And why it's open source, why is like Linux Foundation doing this, and why a lot of people actually joining into the Hyperledger discussion, and why a lot of even public blockchains are trying to integrate with technologies like Hyperledger. Like a few days back, we heard, like yesterday we heard Stacks, they had integration with Hyperledger, Hadera Hashgraph and integration with Hyperledger. Ethereum has an integration with multiple of the Hyperledger projects. Some of them will even use Ethereum virtual machines. So all of them kind of have some sort of collaboration. And in Ethereum Enterprise Alliance and Hyperledger community, they have both of them are supporting each other instead of building standards and projects. So there's huge amount of collaboration that's already existing between these large players. And one of the reasons is because open source isn't, like it's kind of growing in trend. If you really look into a lot of development in the last few years, even especially for the new developers as well, we're using a lot of open source tools, from everything building your website to building your mobile app to building, most of even your enterprise solutions, and even running your operating system. A lot of it has started to move towards the open source area or freemiums, because even Windows is having difficulty selling their operating system anymore. So they also moving towards more freemium models where they can advertise and do things like that. They're figuring out where they want to position themselves. So in this case, open source development has also is growing exponentially. So there's no lacking of open source resources. So when Linux Foundation hosts this, it kind of just exploded. There's so many projects being created. There are also projects that is currently in incubation. There's also a project that's already like kind of finished and they already died off. So there's constantly growing, and the library of like projects that are there are constantly changing as well. So the Linux Foundation, they kind of mainly look over towards the infrastructure layer. And like the projects, you can see they have multiple projects. You have Node.js as one of the programming languages, on JavaScript. There's Kubernetes, and there's Cloud Foundry, and there's actually many other applications. If you go on Linux Foundation website and check out the initiatives, I think that's 100 over initiatives that they run. And Hyperledger is one of them, and that is the focus towards the blockchain ecosystem. And under there, you can see there are multiple frameworks. You have the Indy as for identity framework, Fabric as a way of, I will get more into detail afterwards, but mainly to kind of protect data and data residency issues, and all the other ones I'll be discussing afterwards. Moving towards modules, because once you build multiple sort of frameworks, you need tools to test them, you need tools to integrate. So there were a lot of the other modules that are coming in here, like the Composer, Explorer, Cello. They comes in and kind of support all the frameworks that are being developed, and kind of and also used to expedite a lot of the development that happened on Hyperledger. So, but before that, let's understand what are the goals of Hyperledger. Why are they even doing all of this? Why are the open source team even exist? So they are looking towards creating enterprise-grade open source distributed ledger frameworks and code bases to support business transactions. They're more focused towards enterprise side, but almost all their protocols can also be deployed as public. You just have to do some tweaks and changes, and some of them can be decided. You can just type in a code public and it can be deployed publicly. Provide neutral, open, community-driven infrastructure. So a lot of this is community-driven. codes are being provided by the community. Communities are sharing the information and knowledge about the place. Communities are educating more developers. Even Blockline, we host multiple Hyperledger classes, Hyperledger Fabric trainings, Hyperledger and IoT trainings globally. We did multiples already, and with support of the with Linux Foundation, but mostly it was self-driven initiatives. Then build technical communities to develop blockchain and shared ledger, POCs, use case, fields, and field trials and deployments. So there's a lot of POCs that are being developed by enterprise-driven, even NGO-driven or government-driven, and many POCs that are being developed on Fabric. And a lot of them are actually done by the communities and supported by the communities. And Hyperledger gives priority to the communities and the ecosystem partners quite a lot. So in this case, like whenever there's inquiry that's coming towards Hyperledger, they usually divert it towards the communities, groups, or enterprise partners on if they can help these communities to grow or sustain or educate them. And moving to the next point, which is education. Educate the public about market opportunities for blockchain technology. So it's not just about Hyperledger itself. It's educating the whole market about the potential and how blockchain can be used. So when I looked into the discussion, they're just not doing it for themselves. They're doing it for the whole industry itself. So when we look into a lot of people from the a lot of my colleagues and friends from the crypto community usually have negative perception about Hyperledger, telling that maybe like they're biased, they're trying to enrich the MNCs, but no, they do. Their model is more like a non-profit. They basically have members that pay them their fees every year, and they provide them with services, and they provide them with the community and the information, and basically every year when the members renew, they get their money, and they basically don't sell their product, or they don't go up and make profit, and they don't build the additional layers to basically to make additional profits, and they don't also get involved in crypto game or ICOs or tokens to basically to get themselves incentive from that angle as well. So promote our community of communities, taking a toolkit approach with many platforms and frameworks. So basically, there's a lot of community driven projects here. I think I touched on this earlier as well. Moving next. Just to talk about the scope, as I was sharing earlier. So the custom applications is mainly most of the development, and a lot of the trainings, they actually let their partners and the community players to basically do it. Their scope is mainly to maintain the API libraries, the GUI, the consensus algorithms, the membership policies, gateway, operation dashboard, and all the very technical nitty-gritty stuff. And they mainly look into that angle only in the more technical platform area of technology, and that is what they discuss. And to govern this discussion, they also have their own technical steering committees. They actually decide how or which angle they should be taking the particular project towards. And usually, and there's multiple, all projects have their own governing and their own sponsors. So every project is quite unique by itself. But it comes for Hyperledger, they only focus on this scope. Even if you see that applications like what Jason shared earlier, Tesla is building something on blockchain. They are mostly done by partners or done by Tesla itself with the support of Hyperledger. So I discussed about this earlier. There's more than 250 partners. Actually, there's a whole list of all the partners on Hyperledger's website. I decided not to show all of them, but just to let you know that it's actually a huge ecosystem now. And this has just grown in 5 years. And these are a lot of among the players are among the largest banks and a lot of the largest fintech players and among the largest supply chain players on it. So in this case, the support that Hyperledger's development and the group gets is, I'll say, is quite huge. And going down to what are the projects, as I told you, this Hyperledger is the umbrella of the project, and then go down towards under it, they have a lot of sub-projects that are actually running. And this are actually changing over time because some of them still in incubation. They might go through to production level where people can actually start using it. But most of the codes are already available. You can pick up and deploy. but not every single one is production ready yet. Some of them are still in incubation and still in development. So one of the most matured one is Fabric. I'll be sharing about them after this. But just to give you an overview of all the sub-products that are available there, you can see that all of them are like focusing on very unique kind of a different kind of focus area. So when Hyperledger was starting, there was actually a huge hackathon that was held by Linux Foundation, and they were looking into ways where blockchain can be used in enterprise solution. So a group of people got together and like they won the hackathon, and they said, can we just like change the core layers of a blockchain, where we were used to seeing blockchain as a fully shared ledger? Can we find a way where we don't have to share the whole ledger but still maintain trust in the ecosystem? I think there's a video after this to share more about that. So I'll move on to talk about, there's a video to share about what exactly is Hyperledger and how it works. I think it'll do a better explanation about it. And I'll just play this.
Is there supposed to be sound now, bro? Or is it supposed to be silent like this?
No, there's supposed to be an audio there. There's no audio?
No.
Okay, 1 second then. Let me present again. Okay.
Welcome to the Hyperledger Greenhouse, an incubator for open source blockchain technologies for business, hosted by the Linux Foundation. So what does that mean exactly? Let's start here with you. You're a business, large or small, participating in a commercial ecosystem. Your business partners and peers want to do business with you, but in order to do that, you'll need a ledger. This ledger contains a record of your transactions, along with many, if not all, of the other transactions in the network. It is vitally important to know that your copy of the ledger is identical to everyone else's. So you'll need a distributed ledger. It's a new kind of network database that lets everyone in an ecosystem keep a copy of a common system of record. But how does everyone agree on which transactions succeed or fail? That's where Hyperledger software comes in. This plant is actually software that each business runs on systems it controls to broadcast out its transactions with other parties and receive, validate, and interact with messages delivered by others. With any network like this, a particular software standard is used to keep everyone in sync. But there are other ways to build these kinds of networks, using different consensus algorithms and different smart contract languages. There will be many different ledger networks out there. Ideally, they would all be able to interoperate due to certain common properties, much like how the Linux community uses various operating systems with a common kernel. At Hyperledger, we're growing many different kinds of ledger technologies. Here, you'll find communities of software developers working together to propel open source blockchain frameworks and tools into the future to deployment and adoption. Businesses with strict blockchain requirements trust Hyperledger because it's hosted by the Linux Foundation, and its projects are developed by an open source community. Developers can collaborate on a global level across company and industry lines to create innovative, modular open source components and platforms. It's this open source approach that allows for the kind of transparency, longevity, collaboration, community, and of course, security that blockchain needs to become more mainstream, which is what Hyperledger is all about. Hyperledger projects are meant to help you focus on developing your business solutions and feel confident that the legal, technical, and organizational infrastructure is in place, thanks to Hyperledger and the Linux Foundation. These are all open source projects, and anyone is welcome to pick them up and use them, no fee or permission required. Of course, this only represents a fraction of what open source blockchain technologies can do, now and in the future. So it's time to ask yourself, who will you trust with your trust network?
I'm not so sure how the audio feed went in, but I think I'll be sharing a slide later. You can go through the slide and we'll rewatch the video if the audio wasn't clear. And I think
So,
Richard as well shared the link as
yeah,
well.
yes, he
Sorry,
did.
Jason?
The audio was okay. The audio was
Was
okay. So, can I ask a question, okay, right now? So, what it means, okay, is that Hyperledger, being an open source project, allows many people to freely contribute. So, it's open and public in that sense. But the end goal that they are trying to build is basically tools so that people can build permissioned blockchains.
I mean, it doesn't matter if it's a public or a permission to Hyperledger. Their idea is most to focus towards open public, like more like a open source blockchain initiative, because like some of these blockchains can also be driven for private use, can also be driven for public use. So their initiative is more to support open source blockchain discussion and open source blockchain development. So in the end, is it a permission or permissionless, public or private, is all totally up to the use case and the developers. But one of the issues that they noticed back in 2015, that a lot of the blockchain that was being developed was all focused towards public use, and there was no private use discussion really started back then. It was very small towards enterprise. And the Hyperledger community, the Linux Foundation community, noticed that if we would want the technology to really scale, we should also look towards how businesses can onboard them. And because there were some core issues back in 2015 that a lot of the public blockchains and a lot of the blockchains at that time were not addressing. So there where this initiative really got in and said that, what if we can actually solve this problem? What if we can actually bring privacy to business operations? What if we can build a trusted network between enterprise and companies? Then where you can really see a lot of things that we are building on public blockchains today can really flourish in the economical sector, in the current economical sector. So I think that was mainly the main like force driven towards the Hyperledger project, is what I heard from the community and the discussions. Yeah.
Right. Got it. So it's an open source project, and that it doesn't matter about whether is it public or whether is it permission blockchains. However, it was the community that decided that in order for the adoption to scale, they needed to build something that would onboard enterprises, and so they did, and thus they are where they are right now. Okay, great. Yes. Please continue.
Yeah, that's why if you look into a lot of their discussion, they do not choose a side. Do they want to be a public or a private or enterprise kind of position? Because their technology and their basically their frameworks can work for most of these deployments. So in this case, their position is more as a neutral player. They let the community and the developers decide. So open source is their main say. So their technology must be open source. That's their only condition.
Right, okay. Got it.
Okay, so moving on. So we talk about Hyperledger Fabric. Actually, I have another video afterwards. If the audio was good, so I'm thankful to the internet today. But Hyperledger Fabric was the first project that was actually added onto the Hyperledger projects. So in this case, it was actually contributed by Digital Asset and IBM. As I did a bit of back research, I noticed that this was one of the first projects that came out of a hackathon that was hosted by Linux Foundation. And IBM was one of the, I remember one of the sponsors and one of the judges there. And we looked into the projects during the hackathon and said, oh, that's a really good idea. We should sponsor this initiative and develop this. And IBM, that's how IBM got on board onto the blockchain discussion. They got on board. They were members of Linux Foundation. They became members of Hyperledger Fabric, and they decided to come on board and back the Hyperledger Fabric development, and later on get them on board onto Bluemix. So that's why a lot of the early Fabric deployments was done on Bluemix, and a lot of people knew that way. But you actually can also deploy it privately on your own computer, on your own laptop, or on your own cloud. It doesn't matter. So the first time when I deployed Hyperledger Fabric, I deployed it on my own PC. I didn't use any cloud structures. But if you're looking into scaling a product and really utilizing a kind of a production-ready product, you should be on a cloud. It's more advisable to be on a cloud. And the smart contracts in Hyperledger Fabric is called chain code. to be honest, the reason, actually there's a huge difference between smart contracts and chain code because they exist on different layers. I think if you come into our technical classes, we'll discuss what are the reasons. Because chain code also give you, you get more control on chain code. They decided to change the term and not use smart contract and use chain code instead, is because the functions that it provides are more than a smart contract. You can do more permissioning, more deeper level programming, more control. And you basically are customizing the whole chain whenever you write a chain code. So that's the reason I think they use the word chain code instead. And one of the earliest version was written in Golang, and it's also available in JavaScript. And you can actually run them in secure Docker containers on your PC. Won't get too technical in that stuff. But one of the interesting innovations that was actually came out of Hyperledger, they actually gave us an option. They said, why do we need to give everybody our blockchain database? Why do we have to share our blockchain database with everybody? Because when we talk about fully synchronous or like fully distributed blockchain database like Bitcoin or Ethereum, where everybody has the data proof, it is a secure system, but you lose privacy of your data. So in this case, for businesses, that's a problem. Let's say if today everybody can see what are the price I'm offering for my development or for my training, my competitors can know who are my customers and how much I'm charging them and how much are they my recurring customers. If they have whole of this information, they can use that as on their advantage, and they can decide that, okay, so Harpreet is working very closely with Jason, and Jason is paying him this much of amount of money, like every month for trainings. And maybe we can go up and let's say Harpreet is charging $100 for training to Jason for his classes. Maybe we can go to Jason and offer him for 80 ringgit, maybe, and try to take away Jason from from Harpreet's class, for example. In this case, a lot of businesses would not be happy to fully publish all of the data onto a blockchain, because sometimes you also have vendors' data. You also have like certain permission data that only should be kept with the people. But at the same time, a lot of these businesses want to be transparent. They want to share some amount of data as well. They want to share if this product is valid, if this product is actually been developed by the actual manufacturer. Does it have the right licenses to begin with? Did they had the licenses when they developed this product? Did it went through the right Q&A? Not Q&A, so right quality controls, QC, and checks, and maybe also check the provenance and check the expiry date. All this information would be really useful towards the end user and the resellers or the vendors later on. Is Golang a functional programming language? I believe it is. It is a functional programming language. I did never ask that question before. I'll actually get you the proper answer after this, but if I'm not mistaken, it is. It is a functional programming language. Moving next. I think I have another video. Let me check if I can. There's no captions.
Permissioned blockchain networks that require every peer to execute every transaction, maintain a ledger, and run consensus can't scale very well. And they can't support true private transactions and confidential contracts. So the Hyperledger community designed Fabric V1 to deliver a truly modular, scalable, and secure foundation for industrial blockchain solutions. The most notable change is that peers are now decoupled into two separate runtimes with three distinct roles: endorser, committer, and consenter. Here's how it works. Say you run an organic market in California, and I grow radishes on my farm in Chile. You and I are on a blockchain network that supports transactions between various markets, growers, shippers, banks, and others. Say I agree to sell you my radishes at a special low price, but I need the other markets that buy from me to continue buying at the standard price. They shouldn't be able to execute our confidential agreement and find out the details of our deal. In fact, if they aren't part of the deal, the transaction shouldn't appear on their ledger. Fabric V1 handles all this. My app looks up your identity from a membership service and then sends the transactions only to our peers. both of our peers will generate a result. In this two-party agreement, the transaction requires both of us to render the same result. But in transactions with more parties, other rules can apply. Then the peers send the validated transaction back to the application, which sends it to a consensus cloud for ordering. And then the ordered transactions are sent back to the peers and committed to the ledger. But to get my radishes to your market, there are many other parties involved. Some need to know that my radishes have been verified and checked into a shipping container. Others need to handle bills of lading, customs inspections, financing, insurance, but most of these parties don't need to know about our special price. Now think about our transaction running on a network handling all the markets, all the farms, shippers, facilitators, the whole supply chain. This is the same pattern needed by many industries. Anywhere we need to manage confidential obligations to each other without passing everything through a central authority.
I noticed something, Harpreet, can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
So I noticed, okay, that in the video it said, okay, about a membership service. So when, say, for example, okay, the problem statement is very, very clear that the radish farmer doesn't want, okay, the other parties to know the special arrangement, okay, in terms of the dealing or the agreement or the contract between me and my customer, if I'm the radish farmer. But there is a membership service, okay, that I need to come into in order to use the network. So can you elaborate, okay, on that, how that works?
So when you're basically setting up the network, you will decide on what are the roles and what are the, like how do you want to design the membership service. It's like just setting up a club, right? So when, let's say you're setting up like a Bitcoin club, for example, like in case like Bitcoin Malaysia, they had a membership. We'll decide like who gets, like who are the type of people who can get the premium membership, what are the people who can get the enterprise membership, right? Or maybe it's an ordinary school club as well. You will decide what kind of person can play what kind of role in an organization. Similarly, in the computer systems, we have to decide, let's say, I'm going to set up this network right now, and I'm selling radishes, and my radishes is going to go through my local delivery guy to the shipment to the person who I'm selling to, the buyer, and it will actually pass through this supply chain. In this case, I want the buyer to know this much of information. And he's in my supply chain, his role is the buyer. So in this case, we basically set the rules that buyer can see this, shipper can see this, and all the other places, let's say it's a regulator, he can see this particular information. Let's say the regulator might need to see for taxation information or specific set of information for according to different jurisdictions. So you actually can provide that information to the regulators or the governing bodies, and you can decide how you want to model the rules. So Hyperledger, in that case, they give you this flexibility to decide how do you want to set up the blockchain, how much of information you want to share, what role can each participating member can play, and how do you want to kind of share the data, who should be holding the data as well. So let's say in this case, one of the issues that a lot of people have, a lot of governments and everybody are saying they have with blockchain is data residency issue. Let's say now if we are joining into blockchain and the data is kept up everywhere globally, how can you protect through, how can you apply PDPA laws and all the privacy laws and, and how can you protect them? How can you actually establish user rights? Because then we have like rights to forget, right to modify our data, and right to know where is our data being used. That's how, let's say, if in the case of Facebook, if you want to get deleted, there is a way to get it, get your account deleted. If you want to know where is your information getting used, you actually have the right to know, and Facebook have to provide you on how, where they're using your data. That's the reason Facebook has this panel where you can go and see which other apps are using information.
So what you're saying is that Hyperledger, to use Hyperledger, people have to, like, this membership is a form of KYC. Is that what it is?
It's not. It basically, Hyperledger Fabric gives you this framework. It tells you that this is how you can manage all these rules and members
the
in
participants.
Yeah, so the people who are building the technology, they will pick up this technology, build up for a specific use case. So let's say we did this for a supply chain use case. I built this supply chain called Supply Chain Malaysia, and then I decide that these are the roles for this person, these are the roles for this particular person, and these are the amount of information they should be having, and this is the and this is the restriction I want to add in. So he cannot do something more than this. Let's say he only can have 10 transactions a day. I can limit all of that. I can set all the rules. Even you can customize the consensus. Because today when we talk about Bitcoin, we are consenting on a singular ledger, a simple type of ledger. Because it's an asset which is in mathematics, is accountable, right? But how can I consent on a phone or an Apple, right? So in this case, there's also customizable consensus. In this case, let's say the Apple must be, existing. It must have been found for more than 10 months, for example, for the Apple to be existing. If somebody come in with an Apple that he produced yesterday, okay, that might not be valid, for example, because it has to be grown for some time. There should be certain amount of restriction you add in. So it gives you all this customizability in a framework, and you can go out, all these businesses can go and pick that up, build their rules and deploy it.
Yeah. Got it. So this membership service is a framework, okay? It's not, okay, something which is like, in order for someone to use Hyperledger, okay, they need to be a member. No, it's basically a framework that people can use to basically build and manage, okay, their users, their again, yeah, who can do what, okay? It's a framework. Got it. All right. Sorry.
Yes. So now at the moment, I think this is another misconception. A lot of people see Ethereum or they see Bitcoin or blockchain. They see a deployed network, right? So they can go and see Bitcoin and they can go and see them on Explorer, and they think, oh, Hyperledger might be something like that as well. And they might be deployed already, and there might be permissions up there. But no, it's not like that. It's just a code base that has been developed by the open source community. It's kept there. People can pick up the code base and modify to their own use and deploy the network.
Right.
That's it.
Okay, got it. So what's different, okay, from say Quorum, or what's different, okay, from say Antchain is that they have their own explorers, they have their own chains. Hyperledger is not like that. Hyperledger is a code base.
No,
okay,
even Quorum doesn't have it. You won't find Quorum's full deployed network. Even Quorum doesn't have it. Even Antchain still doesn't have it. Antchain will have on their open alliances later. They will have a network that's deployed by Antchain itself. But at the moment, they just have a code base. People can go there, customize the code, program to whatever network they want, and deploy it for their own use. They can put it privately or they can deploy it publicly. There are a few cryptocurrencies that are using Hyperledger programs. There are a few cryptocurrencies that are using Quorum's program, and they deployed it publicly. So in this case, all these people provide are just codes, nothing more than that. Okay.
Okay. All right.
So
in terms of the some people are in the group, they are saying, okay, are there any use cases? I'm sure that there are a lot of use cases coming up right now.
Yes,
so,
there are more slides towards use cases. But just to discuss about these slides, so you can see, like earlier I shared about Bitcoin, so where everybody have to have the same ledger. So if I had like the database from 1 to 10, you will have to have the same database, or if you don't have the same database, you have to sync back, or you cannot participate in the network. So that's how a lot of the non-channel full node blockchains work. But in channel blockchains, in the case of Hyperledger Fabric, they actually allow you to customize it. So let's say you want to break this up into 2 blockchains. Quorum does similar as well. So in this case, the transactions you do with like specific nodes, you can decide that what are the node transactions that I did with this green guy. I kept these green transactions. These transactions I only kept between this person. Actually, this should be this orange. I don't know why the color changed, but these transactions are with this orange guy, and this blue is only the transaction between this guy and this blue guy. So these are the transactions they kept. So all of them can decide how they would want to store the data and what data they would want to store, and and which participant can't store the data or can't see the data. They can add the privacy to it, or they can even store it in the same blockchain but on a different transaction. So they have the customizability. Here you have multiple chains solution. Here you can have a single chain solution with transaction with different users. So you can decide how you want to customize it. So there's options. So going to a use case, I would like to share, I went on to the Hyperledger website, I saw like 2 interesting use cases that they shared. One of them was on how can they change the healthcare using Fabric? How can they improve the life cycle throughput and transparency? Because a lot of especially towards the healthcare sector and the healthcare insurance sector, there's a lot of claims that actually happen every day. There's a lot of data requests that happen every day. And a lot of the operations are actually very slow and tedious. If you really look into it, even for me, I don't really visit doctor, thankfully. I don't really go to what they call a lot of clinics. And I think, like hardly once, like even my childhood, I maybe might have visited like less than 15 times or 20 times, my whole childhood as well. But every time I go in, they can't find my card because I come after a very long time and they don't know if I have any allergies or have any information, like what's the problem do I have. Even until today, there's like, the doctors don't really know if I have any, like what are my previous, what do you call that, previous cases and what is like the problems I have and what should they be looking. There's no easy way to carry the information from one doctor to another doctor. I think there was actually a research grant, I believe, that was actually was brought in by Ministry of Health last year, but I'm not so sure who got it and what they did with it. But it's actually a research grant to really look into this sector on how can they actually really improve the data, like a unseen kind of an issue. So if you really look into what this company tried to do is that Change Healthcare is looking into a system where they already have more than 900,000 doctors and 5,500 hospitals, like linked, and more than 2,200 payers kind of linked in a system. And they kind of have about 14 billion healthcare transactions a year and claims of 1 trillion worth. So they have huge amount of transactions already, but they lack the transparency. They lack, like the license, to know where is the state right now. And plus also they lack the trust in the ecosystem, because a lot of times when these transactions happen, there's a lot of manual work. You go into the place, you give them a card, like your health card, they check is it valid or not, is this person actually really have, like is it really insured by them, or is this a scam? And then in this case, Change Healthcare is in the US, by the way. And then in this case, they basically kind of always faced with the problem. There's always kind of a slow claim process, and there's a lot of backlogs for the claiming company. They have to hire a big amount of manpower to basically solve that issue. And it's very hard to kind of really digitize the system because they don't have all the players kind of syncing together, because there are people who are doing the transactions, there are people who are doctors who are verifying. You don't know which doctor is actually treating which patient. The patient has what information, what previous diagnostics, and is he even insured? So all of these are like challenges that a lot of the healthcare players kind of face right now. So if I had a healthcare system, it's in the US, by the way, for the in which country is the question earlier. So how can they actually kind of really look into kind of automating this process, kind of speeding up the process, have less backlogs and labor in kind of facilitating these transactions? If you really look into Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies today, a lot of the like the auditing, verification, transactions are all automated. Even if you look on Ethereum with smart contracts, they actually took it even a step further, where you can even build contracts and basically ask the contracts to basically automate most of the processes. So let's say if tomorrow I wanted to go in and we had a blockchain-enabled system, I had my blockchain ID, which is privacy protected. It kind of represents some sort of a unique ID. This is just a concept. This is not related to Change Healthcare. This is just a concept that I think medical players should look into. You had a health ID. You can just go to take your health ID, go to any doctor. They just scan the QR code. Okay, today you had fever, this much of temperature. I gave you this medicine, this antibiotics, and all of them is fed in. So I know there was my antibiotics, there was my health record, and I also can pay from the same application. And later, let's say if I need more medicine, I can maybe even kind of apply from the same application and say, okay, I need more medicine, and doctor can advise, oh, you should not take more of this antibiotic, or maybe you can take more of this antibiotic, or I might have to switch your medicine because you still still showing symptoms. For example, there are like few things you can do from there. Plus, from there, I can see if I can claim my insurance. If I already had the system that I can carry around to my doctor, I can look into, can I claim for that medicine or that treatment from my insurance directly? Because now I have the doctor on the system, I have my medical record on the system, I have my insurance on the system, and plus I have an e-commerce business on that system, right? And plus, because it's on the blockchain structure and it's maintaining my privacy, I can go to multiple doctors, or I can go and get second opinions and still use my data, and can know what was the previous diagnostics, or what is the previous what they call information that was given by the doctor, or what are the previous medication that I took, or what kind of allergies do I have, or what kind of injuries that I had in my life. So the information flow becomes so smooth, and in this case, even the processes for claiming insurance, for payments, for healthcare, for maintenance, and then you can even build wellness kind of systems. Let's say you're a heart patient, you can even fit in all your tracking system into it and make it even more smoother. So I think that is the future of healthcare that we're really looking towards. But the goal of this particular use case was to check, can it actually really support? Can it build the future that we are really looking towards? So they started to automate using Hyperledger Fabric, and they basically break up more than 550 transactions. But I think the Hyperledger, the new version, they have improved. I think you can go more than 2,000 transactions because they're using Raft. But the goal of this use case was to start towards this future in the healthcare system. And then I have another one, another famous company. Oh, why the picture doesn't come out? It's Walmart. Sorry, the logo is not appearing right now. And it's basically how Walmart brought transparency to their food supply chain. If you really look into it, there's if you look into our food supply chain today, is thank God that Corona doesn't, so far we know that Corona doesn't really get infected through food, or it doesn't really go through, and it dies in quite a quick time. Actually, it lasts on different surfaces, it lasts different hours. But as what we know from doctors so far, it doesn't really transmit through food. But imagine if it actually even did through food. And our supply chains was, a lot of our supply chains are connected with where from China and from where the actual outbreak started from. But even let's say it was a different country who were providing us. Let's say Thailand had an outbreak of a virus and it could be transmitted through food. Today, it takes us like a week to 2 weeks to just identify where the eggs or the banana or a chicken is actually really coming from, because we have no backward tracking towards where the actual product comes in. Because every time I buy something, let's say I'm one of the part of the supplier, I take here, I give this guy, there's no more backward tracking. He only know me, but he got it from somebody else. So he know from where he got it and who he sold it to. He know where he got it to who he sold it to, but nobody know who actually really produced it in the end. Nobody know who and where it actually really going to end up at. So you don't have a clarity. You only know one step back and one step forward. You don't really know where is it really ending towards. A lot of times you don't have that information. And in this case, let's say there was an outbreak, there was food spoiling, in this case, or maybe like there's an oversupply in certain areas. So I had this last year when I visited India, actually encountered a very interesting problem. So my family, we have a house in north state of India in Punjab. My grandmother and everybody is there. So my mother is from India. So actually we decided to went back and visit my mother's home and her family. So I decided to go in Punjab, and some of my uncles and everybody, they run farms, like huge farms, and they kind of produce potatoes and onions and like rice and stuff like that. But there was a huge issue in Punjab during that time. There was a lot of potatoes was just rotting on the fields because nobody is taking them. There was oversupply of potato in that state of Punjab. But the few days later, I actually flew down to multiple different cities. I went to Hyderabad, I went to Bengaluru, I went to Andhra Pradesh and a few other states. And every state I went down, I actually decided to check their potato price just for the sake of knowing. And every single state had a different price and a different demand and a different supply. And towards the south, there were places where they were actually having a more expensive potatoes because potatoes was in shortage. So even in one country, their product never really reached out to, throughout the places. There was oversupply in certain areas, there was undersupply in certain areas. So you can see it was like not full, the supply chain never really worked because they could not track where their potato is really ending towards. If now I could track where my potatoes are ending towards, I know which are the areas that are actually lacking and which are the areas that actually needs more. I can decide how much I should be producing for the next batch. There can be more information in the hands of farmers. There can be more information in the hands of sellers and vendors and everybody. So it will also allow people to take better decisions towards supply chain, not only coming towards disease prevention, towards better management of the whole supply chain, and also maintaining your quality, understanding what is the end user really wants from your product. So overall, you get access to so much of data, even of your own ecosystem or your own supply chain itself. And you get to optimize, improve, get better experience towards the whole service that you're providing. So I think that is the future of farming and future of the whole supply chain that we're heading towards. But then we also can add in like payment and financial services up and take it to a next notch. But I think we'll get too deep for that today. Let's move to the next slide. But Walmart is actually building a solution towards tracking. They had a problem where whenever they were tracking their product, it took them at least 7 days to get back the information as where their mangoes are really coming from. But since they applied Hyperledger Fabric and QR codes, they now can just scan the QR code in 2.2 seconds to get to know where their mangoes are coming from. So in this case, it's huge speed up, and they get access to a lot more data than what they used to. And now they can take better decision and basically understand how. And if you connect this with your sales systems, you can know which products are being sold more in particular areas, and you can know which products to supply them more. And in this case, your inventory management costs reduced drastically because all of them has been digitized. You don't really have to hire actual people to go there and do a lot of inventory management. Only inventory management you have to do is placement. When take the product and place it to the selling like racks. Everything else mostly will be managed by the system already. You can automate most of the processes in a supermarket. But if you have such systems which are already tracking end to end. So I think that is a very important use case because it's a multi-trillion-dollar industry. It's a very essential service. And in current light of the current situation, it is an important one as well because if we had a future outbreak, which is more likely because we are way more globalized and we are way more connected, and we are also eating a lot of imported food. If there were outbreaks like this, we would want to know and we would want to take proactive measures than trying to curb it later on. If we had issues, whenever the information come in, we can block the sales and test all the products in future. So they are already moved on from doing their POC in October 2016. Now they have more than 25 products that has already been tracked. Similar cases are also like we heard from Ant Financial that they're working with Taobao. They also build a similar production. Alibaba is also using Ant Financials. I believe they're going to use Alibaba as well. And and basically most of the e-commerce I believe will have these tracking systems in build as well. So it's going to be a standard maybe in the few years. A lot of times these technologies, people will be like, oh, who is using blockchain? We have no idea. But the best thing is when you don't know that people are using blockchain and it's already there. You might see them on your food, you might see them on your laptops, your PC, your cars, but you won't know that they're actually using the technology at the back. It happens in the background and it's actually improving a lot of businesses. Okay, moving next.
Cool.
Yeah, moving towards the next protocol. So I'll be touching briefly on some of the projects. Fabric was one of the the most adopted out there, so I decided to go into two of the use cases. But I'll also be touching briefly on the other projects. One of them is Sawtooth. Hyperledger, this is like the second project which was contributed by Intel. Intel was one of the main developers, but currently is being developed by open source community. Even under Sawtooth, there's actually multiple sub projects that are being developed for different use cases. It supports both permission and permissionless deployment, so you can deploy it as any of the network. As Jason asked me earlier, the question, I think you can see it here. Permission, permissionless, public, private is your choice. And they have, what they did is that they saw that they decided to go with proof of elapsed time instead of other proof of work or other protocols. They noticed that it is still quite similar to it, but it doesn't have the high energy consumption. So the security is quite high.
Are you able to elaborate?
So
are you able to elaborate a little bit about how the difference, okay, between this consensus algorithm, and for those beginners out there who are listening in, proof of work is what Bitcoin uses, okay, where people who participate in Bitcoin's network to verify the correctness of data in the transactions, okay, they stake electricity, and that part of it is why, okay, the Bitcoin network is so secure, is because it costs money to basically stake electricity. It's a game theoretic thing. But Harpreet, are you able to elaborate a little bit, okay, about how this proof of elapsed time, okay, is different?
So if you really look into, there's actually multiple implementation of proof of elapsed time. One of them is that they usually have timers on every node, and all of them kind of decide when will they get the option. So let's say I set a timer, a random timer set that I get 5 minutes, you get 2 minutes, somebody else gets 3 minutes, and every time the time will start running out, and whose times is like basically gets to zero and is the closest to the zero will be the new leader to prove the transaction. Instead of using instead of protecting the node and using electricity, I won't use electricity staking. I think that it won't be the right term to use here. I'll say is the electricity consumption will be is basically because what Bitcoin does is they have a kind of a regressive manner where you actually have to find a nonce value every time you're basically producing a block. So you need to find the nonce value. So you keep on need to check, is this value working with this hash? Is this nonce value giving me the hash and the special condition that I want? If you keep on checking, it's computing, and it's spending electricity. Every computation takes electricity. So you keep on spending until A got it, until it got the actual nonce value that matches with the special condition with the data. So once it got that information, okay, yes, I got the value. I'm going to announce to the network, and if I'm the first one, I should get the reward. On my account. So in this case, they will announce if he's the first one, the network will just drop whatever they were doing, pick up the block from him, give him the reward, and start for the next one. So in this case, that's how it spends electricity. So it doesn't stake it. It's just like it's spending a lot of electricity to basically get to that value on the hash. And every time when you add in the difficulty, it gets more and more expensive, more and more electricity is needed because there's more computation power needed. But in proof of elapsed time, you just use time as the variable to choose which are the leaders you want to choose. And you randomize the time. Every time you play with like who's actually running out of the time, you'll be the next leader. So in this case, it's quite all the times are random. So in this case, you don't need to spend electricity. A lot of electricity to verify. You just verify with a random guy. Every time there's somebody else verifying. So there's no fixed set and there's no coordinator. Everybody's kind of setting up on a different random time in a range.
So you're saying that okay, for proof of elapsed time, it is like the validator is proven its trustworthiness because the longer that it is in the network.
Not really. It doesn't matter how long you're in the network. It's just that the validator, how they do it, because why proof of work really exists there. One is to ensure that not one party really got the control of the whole network. In this case, all the node participating in it, they get a chance to verify, and nobody tells who verify the next one. There's no like a central control system to tell who's the next verifier. There's a random time that everybody will be be set on, and whoever is the closest will become the basically the verifier for that particular block. So in this case, there is a randomization. There's decentralization in verification and consensus, and at the same time, they basically you basically can decide like, okay, in who actually verified that block, and does the hash match or not. The other guys can verify the work of that guy. In the case of Bitcoin, you compete for verifying. You compete with the best computing power you have in hand, and to compete to be the fastest. So it's like quiz where you finish first, you get extra point. So in that case, Bitcoin works that way. But in the case of proof of elite times, everybody got a random timer. Whoever finished first can, maybe like a quiz, whoever finished first can go back. So everybody can work on their own speed, and they can go back early, for example. So there's different ways to apply that, but it solves the same problem. Decentralizing the consensus and ensuring nobody is spamming. Because in this case, no one individual can come in and say that I want to apply, keep on doing the transaction. He can't spam because every time somebody else is taking the transaction, you can't do it. So you can do one, you can't spam the next one, let's say. So there's one of the ways they apply in this case. So use of secure enclave on Intel chip to provide random wait timers. So in this case, they have hardware level protection with Sawtooth as well. So that's the reason Intel developed it. And they also work on their IoT products. So they decided to go up and create like a random wait timer, because a lot of people said that computer generated randomness is like not true. So in this case, they actually even put it up onto their chip itself. So Intel decided to solve the problem by modifying what they call a protocol specifically for certain of their chips. So first validator who of those times expires generates the next blocks. And it also supports EVM, so you can deploy Solidity smart contract on it, and it also works closely with the Hyperledger Burrow community. And one of the use cases is done by BTP. I decided not to put it in the slides, but I would like to show to you here the case studies. All the case studies are here on the website. If you go under the Hyperledger case studies, you can see and read all the case studies that they provided. So I worry that the time would not permit us to go through every single use case today. But I just decided to show you that information, that where can you search and read more. Or if you have any questions, you can definitely throw it out, and we can answer it. But I have a video to explain this better, and I think I'll play that. A lot of people don't get the idea how I can't imagine it, right?
Welcome to the Hyperledger Greenhouse, an open source consortium for developing business blockchain technologies hosted by the Linux Foundation. Within the Greenhouse, diverse global communities collaboratively develop open source projects that uniquely approach enterprise blockchain challenges. These technologies can cross-pollinate and interoperate, just like how the communities driving the projects collaborate in an open and neutral environment. Built from the ground up for enterprise use, the Hyperledger Sawtooth design philosophy targets development of decentralized ledgers and secure, scalable smart contracts. The Sawtooth security model uses a single node type, which simplifies deployment. Plenty of examples exist for both on-prem and cloud installations. On-chain governance lets enterprises manage all aspects of the Sawtooth network with the network itself. Participants set policies and agree on configuration changes using Sawtooth transactions. In fact, even consensus algorithms can be changed real-time in a running network. Start with Raft, then harden with PBFT, or switch to proof of elapsed time as the network grows. Sawtooth software development kits cover a wide variety of languages. The smart contract model supports deploying any and all of these languages alongside each other. Ethereum contracts, for example, can be deployed alongside WebAssembly and Java contracts. Sawtooth distributed ledger technology can integrate with existing internal databases by keeping internal relational and key value databases in sync with the Sawtooth network. Whether you are using Sawtooth for healthcare, supply chain, or financial services, your internal systems can make use of all the data managed on the Sawtooth blockchain. Get started with Hyperledger Sawtooth today by downloading the source code, accessing the documentation, and joining our community from our website, hyperledger.org.
So, I mean, if here where you really look into Sawtooth is different because like you actually can even work with multiple virtual machines at the same time. You can also work on Ethereum virtual machine, and it even can support WebAssembly. So in this case, it can even work. Some WebAssembly is like the programming behind EOS, and a lot of other like cloud computing, and everybody also use WebAssembly. So you can program with C, C++, and a lot of web development programming languages. So it's quite easy to code. A lot of people complain that Solidity is quite complicated to learn, and people don't really want to pick up Solidity. So they say, can we just code it in C++ and all the other products? So that was the bonus of Sawtooth. So that you can have multiple programming languages running on consensus that can change while you deployed it, and at the same time you have multiple consensus options. You can use RELF, you can use PBFT, you can use proof of ellipse times. The reason why I highlight proof of ellipse time here because that's one of the unique ones in this particular protocol. Okay, moving next to Iroha. So it's actually contributed by Soramitsu, Hitachi, and it's actually and NDT data. It's written in C++, and actually a lot of the current applications to make it more mobile friendly, and basically to run a lot of the blockchain protocols on mobile, and like kind of manage your data and your privacy data on mobile. And it provides SDKs for Android and iOS. And I have an explanation video for this, so that's the reason I kept the slide brief.
Welcome to the Hyperledger Greenhouse, an open source consortium for developing business blockchain technologies hosted by the Linux Foundation. Within the Greenhouse, diverse global communities collaboratively develop open source projects that uniquely approach enterprise blockchain challenges. These technologies can cross-pollinate and interoperate, just like how the communities driving the projects collaborate in an open and neutral environment. Hyperledger Iroha is a permissioned blockchain framework in the Hyperledger Greenhouse designed for simple and easy management of digital assets. Iroha helps bring greater trust and reliability into business. Only participants granted access to a Hyperledger Iroha network may join the network, query data, or perform commands. Iroha's robust permission system ensures that all interactions within the system are secure and controlled. Iroha's features are helpful for creating applications for end users. With Iroha, a business can create and manage simple or complex digital assets, from cryptocurrency to personal medical data. Iroha's built-in smart contracts, called commands, allow developers to incorporate blockchain into their business processes. Iroha presents users with lower complexity and lower risk by allowing them to perform common functions using built-in commands. This simplifies tasks, improves performance efficiency, and allows less room for error. Compared to other platforms, these commands also free up developers by ridding them of the need to write complex smart contracts. In Iroha, you can set up a network, create assets, and make a transaction in about 5 minutes' time. Iroha's consensus algorithm allows full Byzantine fault tolerance with no mining, making it ideal for businesses that require verifiable data consistency at low cost. Users are able to interact with Iroha similarly to how they would with a client server. So while some knowledge is required, you don't need to be a blockchain guru to incorporate Iroha into your business. Get started with Hyperledger Iroha today by downloading the source code, accessing the documentation, and joining our community from our website, hyperledger.org.
So if you really look back to it, most of the features are quite similar, but they gave a lot of their emphasis on mobile application development. So because a lot of like people ask the question, right? Like let's say if I'm going to be where will users be using this application? Let's say we talk about supply chain, medical data in the next future when we're actually going to deploy a lot of these technologies. And a lot of the question comes in, yes, I'll be using on a tablet, I'm going to be using on these mobile phones that are connected to devices for scanning and all that stuff. But none of these blockchain protocols was actually developed for that use cases, right? A lot of these blockchains are very, like developed for web use and with no strong support for mobile applications. So in this case, Iroha kind of came in and they kind of contributed, additional SDKs towards Android and SDK iOS development. And one of their example use case is Soramitsu. They have Sora ID, and I have the application downloaded. It's basically places where you can manage your identity. You can upload some projects, and basically in future they want to add in more information they can control from the Sora ID app. So moving next, I think if we start talking about all the projects, we will definitely won't have time today. But just to talk about briefly about all the other projects that are available out there, you can look into Hyperledger Besu, which is an Ethereum client designed to be enterprise friendly. So you can do both public and private permission networks. You can look into public and permission, private and permission, and deploy them. But the bonus is that they come with multiple consensus algorithms. So they come in with proof of work, proof of authority, IPFT, Etherhash, click, and so you can decide, plug and play some of these consensus algorithms. And also they have like special permissions that you can design. And they're more focused towards people who are already building Solidity programming. They're already quite used to it. And they're already quite used to the Ethereum way of doing things. And they want to build consortiums. They want to build new environments in the blockchain sector, because the other blockchain that will be suitable will be Quorum, quite similar to this. And I think they're quite Besu and Quorum are quite similar on the stand, but Besu definitely comes in with more consensus algorithms, and Quorum comes in with more privacy features. INDI is actually really stand for individual identity, INDI. So in this case, it provides tools, libraries, and reusable components for digital identities rooted on a blockchain or a DLT, but it only focus on providing you the framework for building your digital identity. And there are a few identity players who are already using this. I think Sovereign ID is one of their users. They're one of the people who actually build the identity system on this. Hyperledger Burrow is a single binary blockchain distributed. They are focused more towards simplicity, speed, and more developer focus, because Hyperledger itself is quite complicated for a lot of people to even understand what they're really doing. There's a lot of misconception about it. So when you go to students and you go to developers and tell them, hey, pick up Hyperledger and learn chain code and all these new programming languages specific to Hyperledger, a lot of people are quite resistant. But when you tell them, hey, you know how to use Solidity, right? Yes. You know how to use C++. Oh, maybe you can just get on board on some of this, some of these projects. So in that case, that are the reasons why Hyperledger adopts a lot of EVM and WebAssembly virtual machines onto their platform. And you use BFT consensus via Tendermint algorithm, where they have a more sophisticated event system. They can manage all the event system. They can verify the event systems and maintain kind of a relational database mapping. Where we in Bitcoin we use we use database model in Ethereum. In Bitcoin we use can't remember what's the model. Kind of just slipped out from my mind right now. Never mind, if I get it back, I'll actually explain that later. So libraries, there's Hyperledger Quill. It's how we store the database in Bitcoin. I just can't remember what is it called, the term. Yeah, Hyperledger Quill is a JavaScript implementation of Interledger protocol, enabling payment across any payment network via the crypto. Quill provides an implementation of all cross primitive required sending and receiving payments and ledgers. So now you need tools and libraries to basically work with multiple protocols, right? So you have code base, people can pick it up, they can deploy it, they can modify it. So in this case, thank you, whoever gave that, UTXO, unspent transactions. So in this case, you basically, UTXO, Bitcoin uses UTXO, and Ethereum use an account model. So they have a different way of storing. In Burrow, you can modify how do you want to store the information, and you can actually even build a relational database mapping on chain for mapping the transactions, the events, and also let's say for cryptocurrency in that case. And in going towards coming back to Quill, so in this case, if everybody is building multiple frameworks and applications, right? So in this case, that you need common libraries and tools that you actually can use to one, manage identities, manage private keys. Two, you need some what they call tools and libraries that allow you to do payments across the blockchain protocols that people are going to deploy. And then you also need to have share key tools, like for especially for digital IDs, digital assets. You need libraries to maintain and kind of have a common communication protocol. Because if we look into here, they are all quite different in their core architecture from all the types of distributed ledger software they are. So if you look in here, that I have mentioned here that this is a distributed ledger software. All the earlier was also distributed ledger software, but this is a library. They are just libraries that people can pick up for any of the distributed ledger software just now and just implement them. So Quill is mainly for payment and interledger payment protocols. Ursa is for managing a shared cryptography library. So you can use this for hashing it, or using cryptography signatures, or using to create private keys, and to basically to ensure there's like no overlap on, let's say if suddenly, although usually it's quite rare, but you can have overlapping identities or same private keys, different public keys on different blockchains. So once it started to scale bigger and bigger, there's chances of more clashes like that happening, where in that case, you won't be able to use payments that easily between blockchains. So you need to have a common library to manage identities and cryptography. Then you can also use for doing it for payments, and then you can go here and say, oh, can we reuse and kind of simplify the whole development, and can we also use them to store digital credentials and like infrastructure and all that stuff. So this library just support in the development. So in the other libraries, you have Transcend, which is reduce the development effort in writing distributed ledger software. They have like standard library you can pick up and just pull in the codes, and so you don't have to rewrite a lot of stuff in the smart contracts. You can just pull in from the Transact library. And when you go into the tool, then going into the tools, there's also multiple tools that are created. So all the blockchains that have been deployed, they can use them for benchmarking. They can use them for like kind of visualizing their programs. So Avalon is in a way Avalon is a tool that's been created by Hyperledger for mainly checking what is like the what are the computing resources that are actually being used on the place. So developers can kind of gain what are the computer resources, the trusted computer resources are being used up here, and mitigates like drawbacks from all the computing power. Basically managing the EVMs and the computers and the nodes on the platform. You can use this tool for that. And then for Caliper, you basically use it for benchmarks. So you see what are the performance, how far is it really going, will it have forks and stuff like that, if you're using certain protocols or you're using certain consensus algorithm. And then you can just do your benchmark of your platform, and you can see how to optimize your code better. And then going to next tools, you can have tools that basically just as a dashboard for you to reduce effort. You can, like, let's say if you have Fabric, you need to manage a lot of roles. Instead of every single person creating a new Fabric, creating a new front end, they can just go up and pick up Cello and their code. Explorer, same case, similar as well. If you don't want to build a whole customized Explorer, you can just pick up the Explorer code and show the blocks, transactions, data, network, and information. And you can just link to redeploy the Explorer code onto your server, and you'll be your viewers, and you can see what's happening on the blockchain. So in this case, it's like redeploying an Etherscan, but for your own blockchain. And you already have a tool which can simplify, and just all the codes are already ready. You just have to link to it, and you have your own version of Explorer tool there already. Cello is just like your backend dashboard, like managing your Google account or something, where you actually have a dashboard for you to maintain who can operate, who should, what are the blockchains you want to be talking with, and what are the user permissions you want to be setting up there. So that is more like on Cello. But a lot of blockchain as a service already have tools like that in Bell as well. So you can decide if you want to customize and deploy Cello for that management, or you can even use blockchain as a service where they already have the tools embedded. And then you have Hyperledger Grid, which is more domain specific. It's intended to provide implementation reference to supply chain centric data types, data models, smart contract. Basically, you need a common communication platform, right? If everybody is building their own supply chain use cases, like we heard, Walmart is building, Tesla is building, but everybody will be building their own silos if they don't have a common communicating network and library in this case. So in the case of supply chain, so you can use Grid to basically have the common library. So when today Tesla program their own supply chain, tomorrow when they want to integrate with Walmart supply chain, it's easy. They already have the same library system, the same naming convention, they have the same smart contract business logics. So they can just pick that up and they can connect with them. So in this case, it simplifies a lot of the programming and a lot of the definitions. So if you really look into it, all the stuff that I mentioned today, they are all basically giving people the power to go and build their own blockchain however they want, and they provide them with the tools and flexibility to develop however they want, what sort of blockchains they want. They give them the library so they all can work together. They give them the tools to test, verify, and maintain and manage the system. And they give them in domain specific for the case of supply chain, you basically can have a common language to talk about. Let's say you deploy a Hyperledger, any of this Hyperledger distributed ledger protocol for your supply. But if you have these tools that you're using over here, and you have the Grid, all of the supply chains can talk to each other easily. A lot of the integration effort can be reduced. So you won't have siloed blockchains in the future. You can have integrated blockchains. Same, same thing is actually being done by Ethereum Enterprise Alliance as well. A lot of people think Ethereum Enterprise Alliance is another blockchain. No, they're just an association that is building standards for the whole, whole industry. So in this case, they kind of bring in all the people in an alliance. They build a network. They have members, and they kind of build standards on how they can communicate with each other. We don't want a future where we have too many blockchains doing too many different things, but all of them are not integrated with each other. They're not working with each other. Same go if tomorrow, if let's say we had internet, and we had an internet that works in Malaysia and only work in Malaysia, or only work in KL, or only work in Selangor, that will be a useless internet. It will be a very bad experience in the internet. We only can access things in Kuala Lumpur, for example, just like a LAN, right?
Right.
So to have the internet, you need to have common protocols that everybody share, common standards that everybody share, and everybody can just work on it. So to have the internet of blockchain, we need everybody to be speaking the same language so they can easily adopt data transfers, and movement can be much quicker. So that is like a big role that Hyperledger plays especially in the enterprise side. So in the end, why Hyperledger? They take a modular approach. They have years of experience. They have multiple people and multiple companies, especially industry pioneers in different technology spaces like Intel, IBM, and all the big players in the financial industries, supply chain industries, all are on board with them. And they have been running for years. Linux Foundation has been hosting multiple open source projects, and they have been successful. And then it's open source. You don't really have a lot of maintenance costs. The only times, and usually it's also a cheaper service, because a lot of people, you don't have to pay premium services for, basically just having the software. You just need, a lot of the cost is just development and basically also deployment and operation. In operation, if let's say you're deploying it on your own servers, there's different costs. If you're deploying it on the cloud, there's a different cost. So you decide. So in this case, it's also, and plus being open source, you don't have to take anybody's permission. You can just pick it up, code it, program it, change it, modify it, do whatever you want with it. And later, and you're not answerable to anybody because it has an open source license. So,
yay. Okay, got it.
I think we are back to the end. So I'll take some questions, but I think these are the tools that are out there that you can use to build a trusted, like a digital future. So I'll just leave you with my code, and I think that's it from me. Thank you.
All right. So thank you so much. I'm going to try to summarize. Okay. First and foremost, thank you so much, okay, Harpreet, for giving us such a complete, overview, okay, of what Hyperledger has to offer. So Hyperledger is this, I would describe Hyperledger as this behemoth that has been developing over the years. Okay, and you basically went through the entire suite, okay, of what is available at Hyperledger. But let's summarize. I'm going to try to attempt to summarize, and do correct me if there's anything, okay, that is incorrect. So the
Sure.
first thing, okay, that you talked about is that Hyperledger, the biggest misconception about Hyperledger is that it is owned by IBM. That it, because it got started by people from IBM, thus, okay, it sticked because IBM is this very, very large company, but it is not. Hyperledger is an open source project, okay, supported by a lot of large players. Okay, the main one being in this that is being run by the Linux Foundation, and a lot of large companies like Intel, like IBM, etc., would contribute resources and funds, okay, to keep this open source project going. And Linux Foundation is the one that manages these resources. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay, right. And what actually happens underneath, okay, Hyperledger is that there is this huge umbrella of code bases, okay, for people to basically pick up and use. And it's neither permission or permissionless, okay, it supports both sides. You can do a lot of things, okay, depending on what is the use case that you're looking to do. But recently, what my takeaway is that because Hyperledger, the community decided that in order for there to be more scale, more people using it, more people developing, solving problems on it, they had to develop, okay, a lot of tools for the enterprise to use in order for it to scale. And that's why, okay, that's how they got to where they are today. From what I can see, okay, compared to what we have seen in the last 4 days, Hyperledger is probably the most modular and plug and play protocol available, which means that they have done it in a way where it says, like, for this particular use case, you can consider using this. Here, go use, and it's open source. All right, which means that, okay, someone can actually just, if you have an idea, okay, that you want to test out, you can immediately try to build it on Hyperledger, pick it up. What you need to do is basically look at each particular component, okay, and see what is suitable for you, who has done it, okay, what have they used it for, and then see whether it applies to your industry. I think that probably would be the thing that I would do if I was in your shoes. It would be to go back, okay, and start looking at different components of Hyperledger. One of the things that I really like, okay, about Hyperledger, just going back and looking at this big diagram, in terms of opportunities, right? A person can actually just specialize on one area and make it a career out of it. Do you agree?
Yes, actually, because there's a lot of demand in most of these protocols. I think the most being on Fabric and Sawtooth and Iroha right now. So in this case, if let's say I would say is you just learn, first of all, what exactly is Hyperledger, pick up some programming languages, and you basically just be flexible to move around these protocols. Once you already know how to basically just program some of these things, there's huge opportunities out there because there's a lot of companies doing POCs, they're developing their pilot projects, testing out at the moment. There's a lot of use cases being developed. And everybody is, and because this is quite rare, so a lot of developers have the opportunity to basically one of the early people to be in this industry. Because there's a lot of people that are already working in the crypto industry, but they do not know there's a lot of opportunities in Hyperledger side as well. And if you really look into it, everybody that presented this week, actually, like all of the 7 are on the Hyperledger membership or have integrated Hyperledger into their platform, right? So if everybody, there are Hashgraph, they are on it. You talk about R3 Corda, they have integrated Fabric into it. You talk about all the cloud systems that have blockchain as a service have at least Fabric on it. And when you talk about N-Chain, they're also one of the members over there. And I think in future we also will hear about some integration And then we'll also hear also about Quorum. JP Morgan is also one of the core members on the team of Hyperledger. So even some of the big banks are there as well. So you can see that Hyperledger is almost everywhere already, and a lot of people are already supporting it. So in this case, if you're looking into a career in the blockchain industry, Hyperledger will be one of the safe bets, because a lot of the huge players in the industries are part of it. Even Consensus and Ethereum Alliance are part of Hyperledger's members as well. So even the Ethereum and communities, or the EOS community, you can always go to Hyperledger and jump to the other sites as well. Because if you can program on WebAssembly, you can be on the EOS and most of the WebAssembly ecosystems. You can program on Ethereum Virtual Machine, you can be in most of Ethereum Virtual ecosystem. If you can do any of that, you can be on Hyperledger. So
for beginner, where would you recommend people to start? Are there like Hyperledger trainings, where people can attend so that they can take the next step? Is there, like, for example, and even if they come for the trainings, right, where would they go, to get, to put themselves forward so that they can actually have a higher chance of getting, say, for example, to start a career in this?
Okay, so there's actually, you can go for an offline class, or you can go for an online class. For online class, definitely we have...
Right now, because we're all stuck at home.
So I think there's a lot of, there's online platforms like B9 Labs, there's Blockchain Alliance, there's Udemy, there's also on Coursera, I believe they have one Hyperledger certificate, so that you actually can go up and learn from online on these areas. Like for me, if for more experienced blockchain developers, more experienced developers, you actually can go onto their community websites, you can go onto their Slacks, you can go to their GitHub to basically pick up and learn from that if you don't need a guided training. And or you can attend Blocklime's private classes. We host one with collaboration with Monash last year, and we hopefully will do. We plan to do another one this year as well. We'll be looking at the demand. If more people want it, you actually can maybe comment on Facebook or write us an email and say, "Hey, Harpreet, I would really love to be on your Hyperledger class, or I really would like my company or somebody to learn about Hyperledger. We need private classes for Hyperledger." We will come in and host the trainings for you. And in the case of certification courses, if you go onto Hyperledger's website under Learn, you will see some of the certification courses are already there. And we actually can provide those certification courses and the certificates training as well, because I'm one of their ambassadors and we're one of their developers as well. So we can provide those certification courses as well. Okay. Yeah.
All right, cool. And also one other takeaway that I think that is very important for this from this 2-hour session that we had together is that of all the ones that we have covered so far, Hyperledger is one which is purely open source.
Yes, Jason. By the way, there's my Telegram group here. We have a small community of people who of developers in Hyperledger. We started a Telegram group. It's still not that active yet, but basically we have like-minded people there. And if there's any question about Hyperledger, or you're just curious, you want to ask a question, or you have some information, news article, just throw it in the community. And please join in the community as well. And we have some. I'll also add some of the other ambassadors into this community. Okay. Sorry, Jason, you saying something?
No, it's okay. The QR code a little bit kecil lah, but should be okay lah. All right. So coming back, to the key takeaways. I think there's one more very key takeaway, which is that what you said was very true. Is that people tend to behave like silos, which means that I want to start my pilot project, and I do this for my use case, But in order for people to actually see a like, for example, a functioning well-connected internet or blockchain, we need to have like common languages, common protocols, and Hyperledger is one of those which is actually building that. So this is particularly interesting. Another thing, that which is on the open source bit, right, is that when it's open source, what are the benefits of actually being open source, bro? Can you share? Can you elaborate? What's the
So-
difference between open source community versus something like what Unchained is doing?
So I'll say that it totally depends on because these are two different values here. A lot of enterprise technologies they usually focus on trying to be more reserved, where they try to develop and try to sell that as their own solution. But when you go towards being an open source community, you basically let everybody else to come in, pitch in their ideas, pitch in their concepts, and you become you basically get more ideas or new ways to solve these problems, right? So in this case, when you talk about the advantages of open source community, it's talking about you're actually getting a lot of mind power from the people to basically solve a problem, right? When we talk about a lot of these private and enterprise solutions where they are mostly kept it to themselves, because if you really look into it this whole week, they are, like we discussed Quorum on the first day, that's a public blockchain. Although it's run by enterprise, it's run by JP Morgan. They are the sponsors for the program, but it's totally public and it's open source. Anybody can pick it up, anybody can code it. So a lot of people are building tools, they're building in applications, they're building ecosystems and products around it. And the demand is actually higher because a lot of people who are building stuff on blockchain today, they are not big companies, they're not huge companies. They're actually startups who are trying to go out and solve a problem. And they are one of the early movers who want to go in and say, okay, I want to solve this problem and I would like to do it in small cost or lesser cost. So a lot of solutions like R3 Corda or a lot of or Ant Financial, there where we see, oh, do I have to pay a large check per year to just test run something? So I think that is one of the limitations that a lot of these enterprise blockchains have. But then when you talk about serious players, when you talk about big institutions, MNCs, they want to focus more on providing really good service and focus more towards providing, going out, providing good service, getting the big players on board. So there where R3 Coda really shines. They go up, they talk to the banks, the institutions, build financial consortiums, and they provide them with the best service, development support, and also trainings and certification programs. And because they are not open source, they are private, they are charging you every year. But for all the money they are basically charging you, you're getting a good service back as well. But the product, the innovation is limited to the R3 Corda's team. But that's an example. But to just let everybody know, Corda is also open sourced for the same reason. But it never managed to, it doesn't have a big open source community, but Corda itself, it's open source.
It's open source.
They decided to open source the technology to bring in more people to come in, innovate, ideate. But when you run the enterprise version, then you have to pay. Then there's a chargeable amount. Okay.
Got it.
Yeah.
All right. So before we go into take everybody's questions, all right, we've come almost to the end. Just want to go and remind everyone that R3 Coda is actually tomorrow. Okay, so be back here. Okay, at 3 to 5 p.m. Okay. Wow, we're already approaching our last 2 days. Yesterday we were already in the middle point, and now we're already on the second last event already. How time flies! So we have 2 more to go: R3 Coda and Hedera Hashgraph. For those who are interested in cryptocurrencies, some of you have been texting me. You do not know, you're a beginner. You want to know what is this thing called Bitcoin? Why is it different? Why is it that people are talking about it? Why doesn't it go away? What is the Bitcoin halving, which is happening in 7 to 8 days? Okay, what is this exciting thing that's happening? Okay, do catch us tomorrow at 11 a.m. This is something that we do weekly. Same here. Okay, but this one you have to register on Eventbrite. All right. Okay, so go to Eventbrite, look for Bitcoin for beginners, and then you can find us there. Register for it. We do it every week on 11 a.m. But the earlier that you come and get educated, the better, of course. All right. So again, same thing. Okay. If this, I haven't updated. Okay, the image for this one yet. Wait. How do I do this? How do I do this live on a live session?
Never mind.
Right,
Till then,
okay,
Till then, I'm going to put this up. You can update that. I increased the Telegram group size for this. Done? Okay, back to you then.
Done. All right. So what's that? Okay. Okay, here's how you're going to claim, okay, your proof of attendance token for today's session. Okay, here's the QR code. Here's the short link to come give us feedback. Give us feedback. Okay, what do you think of today's session, particularly on Hyperledger? Do you gain value from it? What do you like about it? Where can we improve? Okay, your feedback helps us to improve as well. Okay, and then you can claim this token. Okay, remember cutoff time is 1 day from now, so tomorrow 6 p.m. If you have not claimed yesterday's one, okay, there's still time. The cutoff time is 6 p.m. today. So this is basically something that you can take back and say that, okay, you know, I have a token that timestamps, okay, that today was the first time I ever heard about Hyperledger, and then you basically can tell, okay, maybe fast forward down, you know, 10 years later, you can say, my first encounter of Hyperledger was at this particular time, and then it's recorded on the blockchain. So we hope you enjoy this. Okay, I'm going to leave this screen open, and then we're going to now take questions. It's right now already 5. Okay, so we're going to keep this one, okay, really short. Let's see. Okay, so Yuan Ping asked a question. Okay, is there a trade-off of some kind? Data transfer, efficiency, latency to achieve security when looking at decentralization and centralization approach to data.
Okay,
is that a trade-off?
I mean, when you talk about a trade-off, there's always going to be a pro and cons. There's there's something called a CAP model in decentralized technologies. In distributed systems, CAP model where you talk about. You should Google that out. Every time when you get something, you lose something in this computer system. You can't, I usually use the analogy. Let's say if you want to be safe, right, and you want to be fast. Like for example, let's say if you want to be safe, and you for the use case of maybe transporting money, you don't want to put your money into a Ferrari because one, you can't carry a lot of money in that Ferrari. You can take a limited amount. Number 2, it's highly dangerous because let's say if you're going really fast, you can get accident, the money is lost, right? And when you want to transport that money, it's safe. What you call speed is not your priority. Security is your priority. So you focus on the slower armored truck with armored guys, basically to basically transport the money for you. But let's say you want to get one place to the other place, and speed is your, what they call your priority. And you're not doing anything, you're not carrying anything very valuable or whatsoever, then you can go for a faster car option. Maybe, and when you want to go faster, you want to go with lighter materials, right? So in this case, the cars that are faster, they have to go with lighter. So the trade-off is because they are lighter, usually a lot of these lighter products are not as hard, or they're not bulletproof, or they're not as secure as, the armored truck, because that is much thicker, bulletproof product. So every time when you try to gain one feature, you will be losing another. There will be a trade-off, but you need to balance out between the trade-offs where it's optimal for you. You need to optimize your solution. In this case, let's say if you're talking about Bitcoin, it's low, but its main purpose is to preserve its value and its security in the most hostile environment in the world, because they were the first and they're the biggest. And in this case, they have to be secure. So in this case, they can trade off their speed and their cost of transactions, but they want to focus on being secure. But where you go towards Ethereum, they can't keep on being like an Bitcoin longer. They have to switch to proof of stake, because their ultimate vision is to be a world computer where you have smart contracts, applications, and all the other sort of activities happening. So in that case, they have to migrate towards a faster but lesser secure what they call system. But in a way, their priority will still be towards being a world computer. So every time you will get you will have a trade-off, but you have to make sure that it's optimized for your solution. In summary.
Okay. Yeah. So the answer is that yes, there's a trade-off. Okay. So another question here, okay, that was asked is that if any organization, and this is from Young Me, I think, if any organization is interested to use Hyperledger, what is needed for the organization to prepare themselves going in, since it is open source?
I think open source is not a problem for any organization. Let's say if usually when it's not open source, it's provided by enterprise, then like let's say it's Microsoft service product. So you can just call Microsoft and tell them that I would like to purchase this product, and then you can buy from them and you just pay them the money. So in this case, a lot of banks and enterprises, they have, like it's easier, but usually it comes with a premium, right? But in the case of Hyperledger, they don't build the application layers. As I show you what is the scope of Linux Foundation and the Hyperledger Foundation, they only keep it to the layer of the protocol. So a lot of the technology and like a lot of the applications are developed by either the companies itself. Let's say like Tesla won it. There's possibility there, like and like, let's say example Tesla won it. Tesla's technology company is developing it, and their internal teams will be developing it with support of training, consultation, and all sort of information from Hyperledger, or they outsource it to software house like Blocklime, where Blocklime come in, they consult, they say which is the right protocol for them to use, and then we provide them technical consultation, prepare what is the actual RFQ, and then develop the product for them, deploy for them, maintain for them. So in this case, enterprise can choose how they want to move forward. Do they require, like, do they want to build it in-house? Do they want to test it in-house? Do they have the team and like the talent and the capabilities in-house to do it? Or do they want to outsource it, and what they call outside, and let another software house to build it? So these are like the two approaches that they can do right now. Yeah.
Something I'd like to add to Yang Mi, okay, is that when it comes to open source, it is definitely easier, okay, as to when it comes to wanting to use something that is proprietary technology or proprietary software, right? However, just something to note is that I think even in the open source, there is commons licenses, and then they have their own terms and conditions, right? So say, for example, you can't just take something, okay, and then claim it's yours. You need to declare that, these kinds of things. But generally speaking, okay, it is much more easier to adopt open source software than it is proprietary software. Yeah. So with that, okay, we hope that you guys have gained a lot of value. We've got 2 more days to go. We have Archie Coda, okay, coming up tomorrow, and then we're going to cap it off with Hedera Hashgraph, which I am informed that we're going to have like quite a superstar, okay, lineup, okay, on Hedera Hashgraph. Anyways, looking forward to Archie Coda first tomorrow, same time, 3 o'clock, okay. We're signing off now, okay. Everyone have a great day ahead, and stay safe, stay healthy, and